Kelim Perek Chafov, Mishnah Vov. Av Kesus v'tachrich Kesus Medris. The real way this word should be pronounced, the first word, is actually not Av, but Eiv Kesus. Eiv Kesus v'tachrich Kesus Medris. We are talking about here pieces of leather. The word leather is not mentioned in the Mishnah, but the whole Perek is talking about leather. And this is a piece of leather which has been shaped, or its function is to be an Eiv Kesus, or its function is to be a Tachrich Kesus. The word Eiv means a thick blanket, just used for covering. It's a piece of leather which has been designed, its function is specifically just to cover clothes. Or, in the case of Tachrich Kesus, it's used as a wrapper, used to wrap up Kesus, to wrap up clothes. Says the Mishnah Medris. This Mishnah is telling us, if we look back to Perek Chof Daled, Mishnah Yud Beis, it said there, Shloisha Oiros Hein, the Tachrich HaKenim Tomei Tomei Mei. So we said, if a piece of leather is so meyuchad for a specific function, that it is now not available to be used as a medris, in other words, the function of this kli is designed specifically used for a tashmish which is not medris, therefore it's not able to be makabel tamas medris, although there's a general rule that any piece of leather, as long as it's got 5 by 5, is able to be makabel tamas medris. The Mishnah is telling us here that these pieces of leather, they're not that meyuchad to the ksus, that they're now unable to be royal medris, although they are used primarily to wrap and cover clothes. Nevertheless, they still retain the ability to be royal medris, and therefore they have the normal rule of a piece of leather which is royal medris. However, in the case of, instead of the piece of leather being used to cover and wrap clothes generally, in the next case they're being used to cover and wrap expensive wool, the argomon. Says the Mishnah, Eiv argomon v'tachrich argomon, if it's used for this very expensive wool, purple wool, Bisham I say, it makes no difference. Medris, the same rule applies, it's still royal tamei medris. Because now, because of the particular argomon, something is used for argomon, which is an expensive wool, they are now completely meyuchad for the argomon, and now deemed to be not roy for medris at all. Now the Mishnah is moving on to pieces of leather which have definitely nothing to do with medris. We've had this before, this concept of chipui. This is a pouch, a leather pouch. It's now definitely nothing to do with medris because it's actually a cup. It's a pouch and you can't lie on it. But we're discussing here that even if you can't lie on it and it's not royal medris, maybe it should be mekabel tomei as the normal rule of as a kli kibble. So we're saying here, we've had this rule before, when the kibble is done b'derech chipui, it's upside down, it's a cap, it's a bag which you put in over the thing you want to wrap, it just sits on top, that's called a chipui, that is not called a kli kibble, and therefore it's not a kli kibble at all, even under the rule we once said before that when you have a soft kli oir, it's always ro'oi lekipul, it can always be folded up and used as a kli kibble. In this case, because it's meyuchad for a function of chipui, upside down covering, therefore it's lost its ability to be a kli kibble, and is tohir. And the last case of the Mishnah, lemishkolos tomei. Rabbi Yossi metair mishum oviv. Different ways of learning this machlokas. The way I'm going to tell you is the parish of the Rosh. The Rosh says that where the chipui, this piece of leather, is used to cover weights, although under the rule of kli kibble, it's called a chipui and therefore is tar. However, because you've got to cover weights, mitzad shulchan aruch and choshe mishpat, weights made out of metal have to be covered by a leather pouch so that they shouldn't erode and be worn away and lose their weight. Therefore, the oir now becomes, says the Tanna Kama, botel to the mishkol, to the weight, and therefore becomes tomei as part of the mishkol itself. And Rabbi Yossi Metar Mishum, he says no, the oir has still got its own identity as an oir lechipui, and therefore it remains the same as the beginning of the Mishnah, well, the din just before, the case of oir shasoi chipui likli. And